If you're a bass head, then both the Sony XB910Ns and the Skullcandy Crusher Evos are great options to choose from. However, these headphones are very different from one another. The Sony XB910Ns are for the responsible bass head. These headphones are a lot of fun to listen to, but they're also a lot more versatile and way more comfortable. Whereas the Crusher Evos, these are for the I don't care, give me all you've got bass head. So, if you're a bass head, let's see which one's right for you.
Regarding pricing, these headphones are in the same ballpark. The Crusher Evos retail for $200, whereas the XB910N retail for $250. But just knowing Sony, I expect these to go on sale on a regular basis. Nonetheless, if you want to pick either of these two headphones up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to learn more about either of these two headphones, please watch their full reviews because we're only going to be going over the main differences here. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch shelf down below. I've made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And if you've been watching me for a while, you know I can be very particular. So I'll only set my name on something that I'm really proud of. Now first, let's talk about cases. The Crusher Evos come included with a very high quality carrying pouch. It's rugged polyester on the outside, and inside there's fake fur. This is a very cool looking pouch. However, if you plan on constantly commuting with your headphones, then you might want to go with the XB910Ns because they come included with a hard shell case. So you're going to be protected if you cram them into an overstuffed backpack. Now, when it comes to the headphones themselves, both of these headphones have good build quality. They're both fully collapsible, they both have a good click to them when you extend their headband, and they both have zero cracking or squeaking whenever you handle them or flex them. But when it comes to their materials, the Sonys have a mostly textured plastic body. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a mostly plastic body, but the Crusher Evos do feel way more premium when you've got them in your hands. The majority of the body on the Evos has a soft touch feel to it. The top of their headband has a hit of Alcantara, which is so boasts QC35 of them. Underneath the headband, there's padded silicone, and when we get to the ear pads themselves, the Crusher Evos have really good feeling leatherette. Now, the XB910Ns also have really good feeling leatherette, but overall, they just don't feel as premium as the Crusher Evos when they're in your hands. But now, I want to quickly touch on the looks of these headphones. Now, the XB910Ns have gone through a minor design refresh from their predecessors, the XB900N. And personally, I'm not the biggest fan of this minor redesign, specifically because this headband is much more bulbous this time around. Now, the Crusher Evos aren't the most low-profile headphones out there, but I do think these look sleeker than the XB910Ns. So, looks-wise, I gotta say the Crusher Evos take the win here. However, when it comes to fit, that's a whole other story. Plainly said, the XB910Ns are way more comfortable than the Crusher Evos for multiple reasons. First off, when it comes to clamping force, even though both of these headphones are big head approved, shirts down below, the Sonys have way less clamping force than the Crushers. The Sonys have a looser fit, whereas the Crushers have a firmer fit. And when it comes to weight, since the Sonys weigh in at 252 grams, they're much easier to forget that you have on. Whereas the Evos weigh in at a hefty 310 grams. So you never forget that you have these headphones on, and you really notice them when you're walking around with them on. And when it comes to the padding on these headphones, the Sonys have much better padding as well. First off, since the Sonys have a good amount of soft padding underneath their headband, this headband doesn't create a hot spot on the top of your head, which is super important for long use sessions. Whereas since the silicone padding on the Evos is much stiffer, this headband does like to create a hot spot at the 1 hour mark. I can muscle through it, but at the 1.5 hour mark is when I start to either shift this headband back and forth, or I'll just take these headphones off and take a 5-minute break. And when it comes to the ear pads on the Sonys are way more spacious than the ear pads on the Evos. The ear pads on the Evos are very cramped even for my average size ears, whereas the Sonys should be able to fit most people just fine. So overall, if you're looking for a pair of headphones to wear for hours and hours on end, the Sonys are the obvious choice here. They have less clamping force, they're much lighter, making them easier to forget that you have on. Their headband doesn't create a hot spot on the top of your head, and their ear pads are much roomier. Whereas the Evos are really only good for an hour-long listening session.
But now let's talk about tech specs. Regarding battery life, the Crusher Evos have an advertised battery life of 40 hours, but that really depending on how much bass you're using on these headphones. More bass means less battery life, and less bass means more battery life. Whereas with the XB910Ns, they have an advertised battery life of 30 hours with their active noise cancellation turned on. And if you were to use them with the active noise cancellation turned off, they can go for as long as 50 hours. Now, when it comes to actually charging these headphones, they both charge via a USB-C port, as they should. And regarding fast charging numbers, they're pretty much the same. If you were to charge these headphones up for 10 minutes from a dead battery, the Crusher Evos are going to get you 4 hours of playback time, whereas the XB910Ns are going to get you 4.5 hours of playback time from that same 10-minute charge. Now, when it comes to connectivity, the Crusher Evos can only be connected to one device at a time, making them not the greatest option for power users. Whereas the XB910Ns can now be simultaneously connected to 2 devices at the same time, so you can easily hot swap from one device to another, regardless of operating system, which is great for power users. Now, if you do decide to use this feature, you're going to have to sacrifice LDAC. Now, if you're an iPhone user, you should definitely turn this feature on because iPhones top out at AAC anyways. LDAC really only applies to audiophiles using Android devices, and given that you're a basshead, I don't really think you're an audiophile. However, when it comes to performance, both of these headphones have zero latency across the board when watching movies or videos on your phone, whether you're using an iPhone or an Android device. And when it comes to audio codecs, the Crusher Evos only have support for SBC and AAC, which is perfectly fine, especially since these aren't meant for audiophiles trying to listen to lossless audio. But then there are the XB910Ns, which have support for SBC and AAC, but they also have support for Sony's own LDAC. Now, these headphones don't have aptX support like their predecessors, because Sony is currently phasing out aptX support on their newer headphones in favor of their own LDAC. However, like I mentioned earlier, LDAC really only applies to audiophile Android users. But if you want to, you can always just use a wired connection with either of these 2 headphones because they both still have an easy-to-reach 3.5mm audio jack, and they still come included with audio cables, something that's not cool if you ask Apple. Now, in all seriousness, you can't use the USB-C ports on these headphones as a wired connection, but you can always still use them passively.
But now let's talk about listening to music with these headphones. Even though both of these headphones are basshead headphones, these headphones sound and perform very differently from one another. Now, the Sonys have a fully customizable EQ, so you can make them sound however you want, and you can have different preset EQ settings for different listening situations. But I know what you're really wondering about here is the bass. Now, the XB910Ns have more head-rattling bass than your average pair of headphones, and like I mentioned in the past, having the clear bass slider on the 1000 XM4 set to 10 is like having the bass on the XB910N set to 6. With the XB910Ns, you are definitely going to feel the bass in your music. But bass isn't everything. With the XB910Ns, you are going to get the better instrument separation and the better clarity. Now, I will admit, having all of the extra bass on the XB910N is a lot of fun. But having a lot of bass can get old after a while. So with the XB910N, if you want to switch it up and go for a neutral EQ for a while, you can do that. And you're also going to enjoy the better clarity and better instrument separation. However, I do think it's also important to note that even though the XB910Ns have an above average amount of bass, they do have a little less bass than the outgoing XB900N. So if you're someone that's thinking about upgrading from the XB900N, I think that's something that you should take into consideration. Or else you might be a little disappointed. But then there are the Crusher Evos. These headphones are all about bass. Plainly said, the bass on the XB910Ns doesn't come anywhere near the Crushers. The XB910Ns will rattle your head, but the Evos are going to rattle your head so much that your teeth are going to chatter to the point where you might chip a tooth. Alright, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but the bass on these headphones is insane. Now, the bass on the Evos is tight and well managed. It doesn't roll off like the original Crushers, and it doesn't muddy up the rest of your music, which is great. The bass on the Crushers is more like getting punched by your headphones, because this bass is actually very precise. Now, the Evos have your standard 40mm drivers, just like the XB910N, but what makes the Crushers special is that they have a separate pair of drivers that put out the bass on these headphones, essentially acting as vibration motors. Now essentially, these headphones are all about bass and vocals, because the instrument separation and soundstage on these headphones isn't the best. But quite honestly, you're not going to care, because the bass on these headphones is just so overwhelming and distracting. And besides, you're here for the bass, and in that case, the bass on the Crusher Evos will over-deliver. I guarantee you that the first time you fire these headphones up, you're gonna jump out of your seat. So overall, when it comes to sound quality, the Sony XB910Ns are far more versatile than the Crusher Evos because they have more than enough head rattling bass to satiate your average user, but thanks to their fully customizable EQ, they can be used for different listening situations, or if your taste change, then the XB910N can keep up. Whereas the Crusher Evos are a one-trick pony. These headphones are all about bass, and they have way more and much more dramatic bass than the XB910Ns. Now, even though the Crushers are a one-trick pony, they're an insane amount of fun. With the Evos, you can't help but grin when you're using these headphones. Now, even though, yeah, these headphones do have a few preset EQ settings to choose from, and they have personalized audio, personally, I would still prefer if these headphones just had a fully customizable EQ, like the Sony's. Now, like I mentioned in the Crusher Evo's full review, even though these headphones are a lot of pure dumb fun, these headphones are better suited as a pair of secondary headphones. Since the Crushers aren't as comfortable as the XB910Ns, they aren't the best for commuting or for long use sessions, and the Crushers are also lacking active noise cancellation. Now, obviously, the XB910Ns aren't going to block out as much noise as the Sony 1000XM4s, but their ANC is useful nonetheless. But so that you can see for yourself, we're going to jump into an ANC test. Now, for starters, I included the AirPod Max in this ANC test because they currently block out the most amount of noise because they brutally go after constant low frequency sounds. However, the AirPod Max are not my favorite headphones when it comes to active noise cancellation because they have a lot of cabin pressure. That's why I still prefer both the Bose NC700 and Sony 1000XM4s. But nonetheless, you can definitely see that the XB910Ns do a good job of blocking out road noise and chatter, and they do so without changing how your music sounds. Their microphone array does a good job of rejecting wind noise when walking outdoors, and most importantly, they have a very little cabin pressure, which is great for overall comfort. And then there's their Ambient Mode, which is also very good on the XB910Ns. With an Ambient Mode, you're going to be able to be aware of your surroundings if you're walking around the city, or if you're watching a movie at home, you'll still be able to hear if someone calls your name. And overall, the XB910Ns have a really good Ambient Mode. It sounds very natural with zero hissing in the background, and their microphone array also does a good job of blocking out wind noise when walking outdoors. And this is another feature that's sorely missing on the Crusher Evos. But also, the XB910Ns have quick attention, where if you fully cover their touchpad, they're going to lower the volume of your music and pump in all of the ambient sound around you, so that you can talk to someone without having to take your headphones off, like this.
And then when you let go, the headphones will go back to normal again. Now personally, I feel quick attention should be locked after you have the touchpad covered for 2 seconds or so. So that way you don't have to keep the touchpad covered the whole time you're talking to someone. But hey, what do I know? But nonetheless, I do feel that quick attention is a very useful feature, especially for my constant commuters and frequent flyers. However, I do feel that I have to point out that the Crushers have tile support, which could come in handy. But if you're an Android user, the XB910Ns also have a similar feature. You know, it's baked into the latest version of Android. And finally, here's the microphone test. And plainly put, the Crusher Evos don't have the best sounding microphone. I sound a little shallow and there is some hissing in the background. Whereas the XB910Ns have a much better sounding microphone by comparison. For starters, there is no constant hissing in the background, and my voice does have better amplification to it. And the XB910Ns also try to block out noise pollution. Now, when it comes to blocking out this road noise, it isn't doing the best job because it is interfering with my voice. But at least the Sony XB910Ns are trying to do something because the Crusher Evos just let in everything. And the same thing can be said when it comes to blocking out chatter. These headphones are just letting in everything. Whereas with the XB910Ns, they're doing a surprisingly good job of blocking out chatter. So overall, I gotta say that the XB910Ns have the clearly better performing microphone. Now personally, I would recommend that you try to take phone calls with these headphones in a quieter environment. But you could always get away with a little bit of chatter in the background.
So with all that being said, like I said at the top of this video, both of these headphones are great bass head headphones, but these headphones are very different from one another. The Sony XB910Ns are the logical and responsible choice here. These headphones are way more comfortable than the Crusher Evos, so you can wear them for hours on end without any problems, and they have active noise cancellation and an ambient mode, making them far more versatile for different situations. And when it comes to their sound, if you want to feel your music, then the bass on these headphones definitely has you covered. But thanks to their fully customizable EQ, you can have them set up for different listening situations. Or if your taste change, then these headphones can't keep up. And besides, from a performance standpoint, these headphones have far better clarity and instrument separation. The Sony XB910Ns are not just a great pair of bass head headphones, they can also easily serve as your daily drivers. So these are the better long-term investment here. Whereas with the Skullcandy Crusher Evos, these are better suited as a pair of secondary headphones. These headphones aren't the most comfortable, and since they lack active noise cancellation or an ambient mode, they aren't the best for commuting. And these also aren't the best sounding. But the bass on these headphones is truly insane. It's just pure dumb fun. Quite honestly, when you listen to music with these headphones, you can't help but grin from ear to ear. And also, there's the fact that these headphones do feel much more premium in your hands because of their soft touch body, Alcantara, and silicone underneath their headband. And I also can't help but feel that they look better too. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know, I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something that I'm really proud of.